Ladies and guinea pigs, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Call of Duty, the game that they are just thoroughly testing on us every single day. And today they gave us a new skill-based matchmaking discussion. They added to the white pages, they gave us a new blog post talking about skill-based matchmaking, as well as their deprioritized skill test that they ran within Modern Warfare 3, and they gave us the results, and the results are so contradictory that I don't even know where to begin. It's actually pretty freaking crazy. So here we see, as an example, in early 2024, so January, February, March, Season 2 came out in February, so probably around that time, give or take, we ran the deprioritized skill test within Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, where we used our A/B test framework to loosen the constraints on skill and matchmaking. Basically, what they did here is they decided to loosen up skill-based matchmaking on 50% of the player base and record the results. We have results from the very bottom of the barrel, worst players in the game, to the top-tier players and everybody in between, and they observed and reported how things changed during that test with skill-based matchmaking being loosened for 50% of the player base. The thing about this is they go on and on and on. I'll put a link to the entire thing down there in the description. I'm trying not to make this like a 40-minute video, but they go on to describe how the bottom 10 to 20, maybe 30% of the player base are negatively impacted by skill-based matchmaking, and as a result, they quit the game more, they're not having fun, and they're more likely not to come back. They then go on to say that if those players leave, then if you're an average player, then suddenly you're now terrible, and the community is going to continue shrinking as the bad players eventually leave. Good players then become the bad players, really good players become good players, and basically everybody falls down the leaderboard until eventually no one plays the game anymore except for the very top tier people. The entire idea is to keep a healthy ecosystem in the game so as to have bad players, good players, and everybody in between so that everybody can have fun, and they try to prove all that with a bunch of stats. But the thing is, these stats and graphs do not add up whatsoever, and I will be covering that here today because Activision are just straight up shooting themselves in the foot, I think, with these graphs here and with this test. It really doesn't prove what they think it's proving. In my mind, it proves the exact opposite, and that skill-based matchmaking should just not exist in COD whatsoever. Here we have the first graph, right? This is going to be the difference in players returning within 14 days during their little skill experiment where they basically just use us all like guinea pigs. So on the left-hand side there, you have the bottom 10%, then the bottom 20%, bottom 30%, 40, 50, all the way up to the very top 10% of the community. Overall, during that test, it looks like people are quitting the game more often. They're less likely to come back when skill-based matchmaking was loosened for half the player base. We see the bottom 10% started to leave the game a little bit more. The bottom 20% definitely left the game a lot more. Bottom 30%, and then after that, it kind of just evened out. So when you look at it, it's like, okay, it kind of makes sense. Without skill-based matchmaking protecting the bottom 20 to 30% of the player base, then sure, they probably started quitting the game more often because they were getting shit on a lot more, right? Kind of makes sense. But then we see more graphs which add a bit more pieces to the puzzle here. So here are going to be TDM blowouts, and this might be more in favor of Activision's entire idea of skill-based matchmaking. Across the board, the 50% of the player base that had less skill-based matchmaking than the other 50%, overall TDM blowouts were happening more, on average roughly 9.5% across the board. But the thing about that is, the people that they're trying to protect the most, like the bottom 10%, the bottom 20% of the player base, those people were affected the least by these TDM blowout changes without having skill-based matchmaking happening. And the big thing is TDM blowouts, which they define as a game of team deathmatch where one team wins by 30 or more kills. Well, ultimately, that comes down to team balancing more so than skill-based matchmaking. Like, I don't even know why this is like necessarily here. It does prove a point, and a point that they're trying to make, but at the same time, it's showing that team balancing is not that good in COD if without skill-based matchmaking being so strict that TDM blowouts go almost 10%. Like, that's a problem with your team balancing as compared to skill-based matchmaking. But again, the lower skill players were the least affected by this, which again is really adding pieces to the puzzle here. The most damning thing for me is kills per minute, right? So again, the 50% of the player base that had skill-based matchmaking lowered, they saw an overall decrease in their kills per minute because lobbies were no longer just being manipulated to make people better, they actually had to be better. And we see that the bottom 10 and the bottom 20% of the player base had anywhere from 8 to 10% less kills per minute, which is like, man, skill-based matchmaking is really protecting those people. But think about this. Domination, right, is on average a 10-minute match. If it's a close game, which is what Activision wants, if it's a close game, then it's going to be about a 10-minute long match. And if you're a lower skill player, you're probably not getting that many kills. So if you get 10 kills in a full-length game of Dom and you're losing 8 to 10% of your kills per minute, we're talking about losing 1 kill a match here. Right? If you get 20 kills in that 10-minute long match, those really bad players are losing 2 kills in the whole game. They're losing 2 kills. If it's a 30 kill game, which shouldn't really happen because they're in the bottom 10 to 20% of the player base, we're talking about 3 kills. Ultimately, skill-based matchmaking, based on what they have showed us, is there to protect the bottom 10 to 20% of the community so that they can get anywhere from 1 to 4 more kills a game. And going back to the team deathmatch example here, the blowouts that are happening because team balancing is so bad within COD, it affects the lower skill players even less. Like, if anything, on average, it really seems like the lower skill players without skill-based matchmaking have relatively closer matches than the rest of the player base, yet they're quitting more. They're trying to protect these people, right? They give us skill-based matchmaking with the sole idea, the sole intent of making every match a bit closer, a bit more even, a bit more fair, with the idea of making it so every person in the lobby can contribute something meaningful to that particular match. Well, it sure looks like to me that even though the lower skill players have on average the closest games compared to all the other skill brackets, they still end up quitting the most, which ultimately just says they don't care. That's really what it comes down to. Lower skill players, if you're in the bottom 20% of COD, which let's be honest here, like, COD's not exactly a very difficult game to get down, you know? If you're that bad at the game, you don't care. You don't give a fuck. You back out of matches because you don't care. You don't care about your stats. You don't care about wins and losses. You don't care about the matchmaking algorithm that's trying to protect you. You don't care about impacting matchmaking by backing out of lobbies and having the matchmaking system have to find somebody else to throw in there. You don't care. The reason why there's a less rage quit rate at higher skills is because those people actually care. They care about winning. They care about doing better. They care about their stats. They care about any number of other things. Lower skill players don't give a shit, because if they did, they wouldn't be lower skill players. I refuse to believe that there is this entire conglomerate of people in the world who are just so painfully bad at Call of Duty, a $70 AAA premium game, that they buy it every year and just continue to suck at it without ever actually getting better. I refuse to believe that that is the case. It's entirely possible, and maybe this is what they're going for. Perhaps those really bad lower skill players eventually over time become the average players and eventually the good players, but you don't see that because of skill-based matchmaking protecting them. Like, if you jump into the game and you're doing okay as is, and then skill-based matchmaking puts you up into the next bracket, and then suddenly you're getting dunked on, well, you're going to quit the game anyway because it doesn't feel good to get dunked on when you weren't previously, right? The best way to handle this is, if you're bad, you might get dunked on a little bit, man. That's okay, but at least you know where you are, and matchmaking is not trying to protect you, and it's not screwing over other people, and ultimately everything comes to an equilibrium where you see that tangible result of you getting better over time as compared to the matchmaking system telling you that you're allowed to now be better, at least for a little bit, according to their algorithmic bullshit. They came out today and they posted everything. I'll put links to it down there in the description. It's a lot to read, honestly, but they came out today to kind of reveal all this data and be like, look at this. Bad players are leaving a lot more without skill-based matchmaking, yet other parts of their data completely contradict that, and it's very explainable if you just have 2 working brain cells, which apparently is 1 more than these lower skill players that they're trying to protect. Wow. I was at work today and then I started reading about all this and I'm like, man, I cannot wait to get home and go through this document and make this video, because holy shit, man, like, straight from the horse's mouth, they explained in detail how they're trying to protect those lower skill players because they want those lower skill players to have more of an impact in the game because they don't want them to quit. But when they actually do have more of an impact in the game, the stats and the figures are right here. Matches are closer without skill-based matchmaking. If you're a bottom 10 to 20% player, they end up quitting more. They don't want closer games. They want just random bullshit because, you know what? They don't care. And ultimately, it's like the craziest thing. Like, Activision, Call of Duty, Microsoft, like, they are catering the game, basing the entire matchmaking, which every aspect of the game goes through this matchmaking system. Like, every little facet of the Call of Duty multiplayer experience goes through matchmaking. It's all designed to protect these people who don't care. It's like Activision is like this dude who's like simping for this person who has no interest in them, and no matter what, they keep changing themselves to try to win over this person when that person doesn't give a fuck to begin with. Meanwhile, Activision has tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions maybe of loyal fans that buy the game every year, have been playing the game for like 20 years. Some of us love the franchise, and they're trying to push us away to win over some bimbo in a $14 sundress. Like, Activision, quit simping. camping. What are you guys doing here? If they cared, they would try harder, but they're not. And you're trying so hard to get these people who don't give a shit about your game to like your game while pushing away the people that already like it, the people that buy things in your game, the people that buy the battle passes, the people that support you and helped make you what you are today. You're pushing them away, trying to get new people in who don't give a fuck. And the data shows. You showed it, Activision. You gave it to us. Use your brains. Holy shit. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this video here today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts and feedback down there in the comments. I'm about to have an aneurysm here thinking about this. This is just... I don't even want to think about it anymore right now, frankly. And Black Ops 6 is coming, and you know Black Ops 6 is going to do the exact same thing. Activision has said that they have no plans to remove skill as a parameter for matchmaking. They throw around the idea of maybe having a no skill-based matchmaking playlist, but they have a feeling that bad players are never going to join it anyway, and only good players are going to join it, so they don't even want to test it. It's so frustrating. Meanwhile, X-Defiant has been a blast since launch, and you know what? People aren't complaining about that game's matchmaking. People go in, they have fun, and enjoy the game for what it is, and see that tangible progress as they get better. Call of Duty needs to learn from that. My goodness. Guys, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts and feelings down there in the comments, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.